Hey, I'm going to show you how I make the 511 mix. It's super easy to make, and it's just pine bark. These are a bit bigger, but these are for bigger plants. If you have smaller pots, maybe 2 gallons or less, or maybe 5 gallons or less, and you need a little more moisture retention, you might want to go for pine bark fines. But for me, this works well, and the plants that I'm potting up already are in a mixture of this. But I'm going to mix this up. I'm going to add fertilizer and amendments, and I'm going to talk about the cost of everything, because this mix is really effective and really cheap. So it's 5 parts pine bark, which I think I got this bag for $4 or something, which is crazy. 1 part perlite. Let me get my, like I said, in some cases this size might be too big. You could use, for medium bark, you could use orchid mixes. Like I saw, it's a little more expensive, but you could use medium orchid bark. And for plants that you need to retain a little more moisture on, I recommend using pine bark fines. This is a mixture of forestry products, so it's Douglas fir, probably the makeup of the forests around here, but I got this for $4. The most expensive part of this mix is the peat moss. Peat moss has gotten pretty expensive. If you want to make peat moss cheaper, you can use a cube, like the compressed bricks, because you can get like 3 cubic feet for, I don't know, $26. But I got fluffed peat moss for $16 because I just didn't need as much as a brick. Then I'm going to add pumice. So this is about 5 parts peat moss. I'm going to make 3.5 cubic feet. So I'm going to have 2 cubic feet roughly of pine bark, and I'm going to add about a half a cubic foot perlite into here. I'm going to add a little less and just see how it is, because the other cool part about this mix is that you can just customize it. And my citrus trees are going into this, so that's why I'm using exceptionally airy media, because I just tend to have much better results when I pot in something like this versus potting in like just a peat moss perlite blend. So that's why I'm rolling with this. And so I'm going to mix all of this up, mix fertilizer in, which I bought in bulk. So you end up you can make a lot of soil for cheap using this method. And now I'm going to add about 1/3 of this bag of peat moss that I got. 1.5 cubic feet. And this is your moisture retention. Smells good. And this, so you can adjust the ratios, of course, to suit your needs, or after you make it. You can learn the next time you make it. And so this this mix came about on the popular garden form garden web, but it's used, variations of this are used often in the horticulture industry, and usually people talk about or get really worried about nitrogen with the pine, like nitrogen loss with the pine bark. But you just need to let this compost with your amendments and nutrients for a couple of weeks, and maybe add a little nitrogen early on in the life cycle. Because this is only, the outside of this, as it decomposes, is going to rob nitrogen initially. But once this surface is starting to decompose, it's not going to start robbing a ton of nitrogen. It's just initially. So don't plant into this mix right away unless you're going to add some kind of like inorganic fertilizer. But I'm going to make sort of a living soil style version of this for my citrus trees. So I want it to be acidic, I want it to be airy. I'm going to add some biochar to it, which is a really good addition for my microbes. I'll show you what I've got going in the wheelbarrow with that. But now I'm going to get into the amendment part. So I'm going to be using citrus mix. I don't know how I'm going to flip this video, so I just bought this on sale. That's a key part, is buying all of these components when they're on sale. Saves you a lot of money. And I'm going to add, this says to add half a cup per cubic foot of soil, and this is about 3.5 cubic feet. So that will be about 1.5 cups. But I'm going to just add 2 for the hell of it. And this has a good supply of minerals, but I've found that having an ample supply of good quality calcium is really helpful. So I'm going to add some basalt rock dust. Some people don't believe in it. I've had good results with it. I think having just a small amount of nutrients, always weathering. One second, I gotta close the door, it's getting, or open the door. So I added 2 cups of citrus fertilizer into here, and this is a 611. This is also going to help with the initial nitrogen suck from the decomposition process. So we'll just mix this in, and I'm going to keep mixing this over a period of about 2 weeks while I let this all kind of reach equilibrium. Next thing I have is oyster shell flour. So I'm going to add about 2 cups of oyster shell flour. This is going to help balance the pH. It's just similar to lime, it's just calcium carbonate. So this is oyster shell flour. I bought 5 pounds for like 10 bucks. Here's 2 cups. And then I've got the salt, which is also 2 cups. And with rock dust, this is a long-term amendment. This is just to make the soil work for me for a long period of time. It's gonna have, we're lucky to live in a region here in the Pacific Northwest that has really good minerals available to us from our volcanic history. So I highly recommend taking advantage of them. So I got 2 cups of that. And then I'm gonna mix this in as we go. And I'm gonna add 2 kinds of biochar to this mix. I'm going to add this gypsum. I mean, if I had it available, I would add gypsum to this too. I would add about 1 cup, maybe half a cup per cubic foot. But I don't have any gypsum because Home Depot sucks, and Home Depot was the closest thing I could get and had, unfortunately, the cheapest. So I'm just mixing this up. Like I said, I'm going to turn this every so often. Actually, I'm going to add a little more PFAS. Just, so this is another thing you can do. If you don't like the texture, you can modify it. But having the minerals in the calcium carbonate or oyster shell flour or lime, and it'll still be acidic, but it's going to help balance the pH of this soil. Well, it's not really soil. This is a soilless mix. So, but it's got minerals. And the final thing I'm going to add is about a half cup of bone char, or I mean a cup of bone char total. So this is a special kind of biochar made from bones, and it's really high in calcium and phosphorus, and that's going to slowly break down. It's also going to impart some unique properties to the mix in terms of cation exchange, in terms of water retention, in terms of other mineral absorption and adsorption capacity. But so here's my mix, yeah, and this is this is gonna drain well, but still hold moisture. And one of the ways that you can really make this mix work well for you is to include biochar, because when we're growing in containers, it's very easy to have this is the bone char. It's very easy to have your minerals and your nutrients leach out, especially when your plants are under protection. So you end up with all of your minerals and whatnot just washing out with each rain. And one of the ways to prevent that is by using biochar, because it has a really good ability to hold on to. It's dusty in here. It's a really good way to kind of help your soil hold on to everything. Sorry about all the crinkly bags. So now I'm going to show the final component. Well, I'll wet this down and show you how I do this. But since we mix organic nutrients in, it's not going to be immediately available, and there's going to be sort of a mini composting decomposition process. And we want to make sure that this media is through that process before we pot the plants up in it. So I'm just going to lightly wet this. I don't want it super wet. And then I'm going to mix. is going to heat up, so you know when it's ready to plant in is when you come, and notice how I'm just slowly adding moisture to this. You don't want to sog this, or you're going to slow down the biological processes. You just kind of want it to be, I don't know, perfect. So the way that I do that is just keep going until it's just nice and wetted down, and but there's not like water pooling at the bottom. And when you dig down and mix it, there isn't dry pockets. And it's useful just to go slow during this process. It's going to take just a little bit of time, but you can see it's starting to kind of work the moisture into it. And this is like very easy to do. And I made, 23, 25 gallons of media. Again, you can adjust the particle sizes of your mix based on your own experience with your plants. You can use smaller pine bark. It doesn't matter. And then another thing that I'm going to add just at the end to really kick this off, and this is optional, it's just going to make things work a little bit better, is I'm going to add some worm casting leachate. And that's going to provide a lot of beneficial biology in here, and it's really going to like set this mix off. So anyway, that's how I amend my larger plant acid loving potted trees that I grow. You can adjust the pH of this mix by adding more of the basalt and more of the calcium carbonate, or you can add a little less. But this is definitely going to be on the acidic side. But yeah, I'm going to just show you, and then when this is done, you'll have a mix look like this. And then I'm going to let this cook, turning this, every couple of days. And while that's going on, I'm activating the biochar that I'm going to add to the mix. This, I'm going to add about 10% of the volume as biochar. And what I've done here is I've taken a bunch of worm castings and worm casting leachate and some rainwater that collected in this. In addition, I added some soy amino acids just to really give this a lot of nitrogen. Again, just so that I can get over that initial nitrogen consumption that this mix will have. But this is just going to soak for a while until it dries out and really absorbs everything. And then I'm going to add this biochar into the soil mix in about, 4 or 5 days. It'll be good enough. And I want the biochar to start interacting in here. So yeah, this is, I hope this was helpful. I hope that this helps you grow better container plants, because it's kind of a weird mix, but they really do like it. And the nice thing about this mix is that it's really hard to overwater. maybe every year, like you're gonna maybe lose some peat moss, so top it off in the future with just compost or worm castings and add your fertilizer as recommended. But I hope this was an informative video and have a good afternoon.